Konami's Track and Field shipped to arcades in 1983. It essentially set the standard for how an athletics or Olympics game works. For the most part, you'll be bashing buttons or swishing around a Wiimote or whatever around, and you'll be doing it ever so quickly should you play any sort of game based on the Olympics. They're largely the same game, from Konami's early efforts to the official licensed games of the events themselves, to the later games which ditched Sally Gunnell and Roger Black for a fat plumber and a deformed hedgepig who's been at the electric blue Schwarzkopf hair dye. But I've got a quandary for you. What if you don't like that lactic acid build-up in your arm? What if you value your fingertips and don't want to treat them like they've wronged you in some manner? But at the same time, you want to celebrate the Olympic movement. You just don't want to have to wear a wrist brace after playing the games based on it that will no doubt inspire the workplace jokers to comment on your predilection for frenetic self-love. Well, now you can enjoy all the glitz and indeed the glamour of the world's most auspicious sporting event, but in an entirely different genre, with Izzy's quest for the Olympic rings. Well, I say now, I mean back in the mid-90s. For yes, this late-stage Super Nintendo and Megadrive game was a tie-in for the Atlanta Games held in 1996. The Olympics, of course, of Michael Johnson running like Billy O, of Nigeria winning the football against all odds, and of wrestling royalty Kurt Angle breaking his neck, but still beating his Iranian opponent. And, of course, of Britain having their worst ever gold medal haul with a paltry single gold courtesy of Pinson and Redgrave, and them being a coxless pair. That's emasculating for Britain in itself. But never mind the lack of genitals of our best sportsman of 1996. What is this? Or should I say, what is it? As that is this thing's name, or Izzy for short. The Atlanta Committee for the Olympic Games was looking for a mascot for their event, and a chap called John Ryan, who was a senior animation director at Design FX, provided this curious fellow. Not only did Izzy get a game, but he also got a TNT TV special that came out in 1996, which was sold on VHS and ended up being uploaded into YouTube in the early 2020s. You know, you can watch it if you like right now, just in case you're curious as to the origin story of a 30-year-old Olympic mascot that will never be seen again and you probably didn't even know existed before this video came into your eye line. The video game has the plotline of that animation, so don't feel you have to watch it. Izzy wishes to be an athlete on the planet Torch, so he takes it upon himself to retrieve the Olympic rings, which he's been instructed to do by his elders. I mean, why bother? I mean, the rings are merely symbolic, Izzy. Don't worry, we can just draw some new coloured circles. It's not like it takes a lot of effort. It's nice for you to go on this long quest, and it's nice also looking after your fellow corporate logos, but it won't stop that sports from going on if those rings aren't there. Don't worry about it, son. This platformer was released by microcomputer veterans US Gold. The Olympics proved to be a bit of a swan song for US Gold, as this was one of the last 4 games released, along with Olympic Soccer, Olympic Summer Games and Olympics Atlanta 1996, at which point the inflictor of many a ropey arcade conversion from the Spectrum and Commodore 64 days finally coughed its last and went and carked it. The game was programmed by Alexandra Inc., who also coded Sylvester and Tweety in KG Capers and Demolition Man for the 16-bit consoles. As you can see, we have ourselves a platformer, more specifically what I like to call a Yankformer. See, I'm trying to create a thing here, so bear with me. A Yankformer is an American platformer. I mean, it's pretty obvious from the name, isn't it? So I often hear people talking about Euro platformers, which are always very similar to each other. You've got a gigaton of collectibles. Graphics are decidedly European, with sort of low-quality sprites generally, and often cracking tunes and a gradient skybox, especially on the Amiga. You know the ones I mean, things like Jet Set Willy, Mr. Blobby, Lionheart, LOLO, Cartoon Fun, which I'm duty bound to mention anytime everyone mentions Euro platformers. And then, of course, you've got your Japanese platformers, and we know all about them too. Mario, Sonic, Mega Man, Castlevania. They always have like incredibly creative ideas and tight controls. You can tell a Japanese platformer or a Euro platformer by playing it for roughly about 30 seconds. But I also think you can tell an American platformer too. I think they're just as distinct in their look and feel. Think about it. Think about things like Aladdin, Gargoyles, Cool Spot, Earthworm Jim, Bubsy the Bobcat, all varying quality, but I think they all play and feel roughly the same. You've got the kind of floaty jump controls. They're always really well animated. There always seems to be stuff in the foreground as well. Out of the three genres, Yankformers are probably my least favourite. I mean, the best of the genre, Aladdin, I prefer the Super Nintendo one. Sorry. But I can tell that it is a good one, and I can tell what is a bad one. Bubsy the Bobcat. So after that long waffle, how does Izzy rank amongst Yankformers? Because it is indeed a Yankformer game. Well, it's about in the middle. It's lacking a lot in the visual variety of the best of the subgenre, but it's not frighteningly crap to play or anything like that. Indeed, it has some pretty good ideas inspired by the license that it represents. Izzy, at different points of his adventure, encounters power-ups that are based on some of the sports undertaken at an Olympiad. He can turn himself into a helicopter with a hammer, the old hammer throw. He can twat villains with a baseball bat or with a fencing sword. He can turn himself into a javelin to launch himself at vast distances, and he can hang from a glider. He also turns himself into a rocket, which, as far as I'm aware, isn't an Olympic sport, going to the moon. But yes, a rocket, right. These power-ups have a very short shelf life. You will either run out of them very quickly, or you'll encounter a flag which strips you away of your morphing abilities. Izzy isn't helpless without the power-ups, though. He can sit on them after a big jump like Mario, an attack which works wonderfully well on younger brothers in real life when assisted by a fart. That is an acceptable assault and indeed comedic chemical warfare all in one. Like I said before, it's very middling. The animation's middling, the graphics are middling, the enemy designs are middling. There's barely any variety in any of the stages or opponents. It's got that Yankformer floatiness to the jump. It's a bit laggy with the control. It's probably a touch too long as well. And it feels very slow, which is not quite right for a game based on athletics. I don't know what we can really expect from a platformer based on an Olympics logo. But maybe a good idea would be to give it a bit of an injection, non-steroid based of course, of sporty minigames. Just to give it a bit of a distinctive edge. Make the most of those power-ups. I mean, there's the rocket minigame, but again, that's not really a sporty thing, a rocket, is it? What I'm talking about is stripped-down versions of those track and field games that I mentioned right at the beginning of the review. See how far you can get Izzy as a javelin, say. See how far you could hit a baddie with the baseball bat. Race one of the enemy characters. But they're not really here. It's a straight-up platformer that's as bland as a post-run interview with an athlete. It's an odd choice for a platformer, no doubt, the 96 Olympics being as they are, but it feels like a missed opportunity for a more sporty blend. So yes, not terrible, but it doesn't get on the podium for me. It's very much more Britain's performance at the Olympics in 1996 than, say, 2012. GamePro reviewed this game in April 1995 and said that it's a 3.5 out of 5 stars and a good rental, but Izzy is no keeper. Next up on weird licenses, well, we finally get to move away from current sports to, well, just currents, as we will be playing California Raisins. Until then, though, like, subscribe, and Kay, thanks, bye.